Mr. Speaker, the 11th of June, which was the day these four nominees were vetted, was the day that the Right Honourable Speaker directed all of us to go to our constituencies to take part in the tree planting. Mr. Speaker, the chairman of the committee has not been fair to the minority side of the committee, while the Right Honourable Speaker directed that we should take part in the tree planting. He organized a meeting for vetting of this. So, Mr. Speaker, we from the minority side will not be part of this debate because the chairman has not been fair to us. The chairman has not been fair to us. Whilst we were in our constituencies doing national assignment directed by the Right Honourable Speaker, he was organizing a meeting to vet nominees. Mr. Speaker, why should that be so? So our side will not support these four nominees. We will not be part of this, and I want to draw this to make this to your attention that we will not take part in the debate. We will not support these people.
So they walked out. But that wasn't all. We heard also from the majority leader who had some words for the speaker himself. What Evans Mensah says, it's important the speaker, Alban Babwin, consults leaders before he gives directives like ordering all MPs to go plant trees, declaring June 11 as no sitting day.
What I'm gathering from the statement by the Deputy Minority Leader is a mix-up in communication. It's important that if a speaker should make a ruling or give a directive in such regard, that he consults with the leadership of the House. I think it's important because the speakers don't run Parliament on their own. They should be very consultative. But, Mr. Speaker, I also think that, as I stated earlier, that this is not any matter that should divide this House. And I think it's unfortunate that there was a mix-up in communication. If maybe the Speaker had been much more consultative, we would have seen a way about it. And the Deputy Speaker, who is the chair of the committee, Speaker, I'm told, engaged some of the committee members. Not everybody was present, and unfortunately, information was not transmitted appropriately, which is how the committee held a discussion and took it to the extent that nobody has any strong point against anybody.
Let me take you live to Parliament now. My colleague Joseph Gakpo is there for us tonight, joins us via Zoom. Joseph, let me first ask, where was Alban Babwin when all this was playing out on the floor?
Very well, Evans. Mr. Babwin was not in the seat when all this was playing out. He had been in the seat earlier in the day, overseeing sittings, and then at a point in time, he stood up for his first deputy to take over. And along the line, because Mr. Seus is also the chairman of the appointment committee, then he had to give way for the second deputy, the MP for Fomena, Mr. Esiama, to subsequently take over. As to then go present the report on the floor. So, Mr. Babwin himself wasn't present in the chamber presiding over the sitting when eventually the House got to the processes of approving the final four deputy minister designations.
I asked that because of what we just heard Chairman Sabungsi suggest. He almost suggests that it is the speaker's communication that may have created this misunderstanding, and obviously the speaker is the ultimate lord of Parliament. The rectification of this would have been up to him.
Precisely. And interesting enough, when at the end of sitting, the two sides, speaking of both the NDC side and the MPP side, addressed a media briefing, one of the points that came up strongly was that for those on the minority side, specifically Hassan Suhini, who is the MP for Tamale North, he made the point that the committees of Parliament actually serve at the will and also at the behest of the Speaker of Parliament. And so if the Speaker is asking MPs to then go plant trees, they see it as a form of disrespect. The fact that the chairman of the committee, Jose, went ahead with the process when the Speaker had directed that the MPs engage in tree planting. So that question about how the Speaker possibly feel about this claim of disrespect towards him and what he thinks even of the processes unfolding at the time that he had given this directive still remain that we possibly need to hear from the Speaker on. We've been getting additional information that the leadership on the minority side raised this issue with the Speaker previously, because then they insisted that they were not part of the vetting, they can be part of the approval. And the speaker's response to them, even when they drew his attention to the claim of disrespect, was that those concerns that they have, they should go ahead and raise it on the floor when the approval of the report is actually being done. But funny enough, the speaker himself wasn't there when the approval was being done, and neither were the leadership of the NDC side on the appointment committee. Speaking of Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu, who is the ranking member on the committee, and Muntaka Mubarak, who is the Minority Chief Whip. Both of them were also not present when the House was approving this particular report.
Joseph, stay with me. Let me bring in Mr. Hassan Suhini, who's a member of parliament himself and had publicly raised concerns with some of these nominees that we now know have now been approved. Mr. Suhini, thank you for your time here on Newsnight. It's pretty strange, to say the least, that the Speaker would, from what we've heard, give a directive of a no sit-in day. The vetting happens. Your members aren't there. From what Joseph tells us, apparently your side have raised this with the Speaker, and it hasn't been resolved until the members have been indeed approved, as has been suggested by your side, without your participation in the actual vetting. What's your own reading of all this? Hello, Mr. Suhini. If you have muted your Zoom, kindly unmute for me.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
We don't have
all right.
Internet.
So I just want to say good evening to your listeners and viewers, and also to Joseph, who is reporting from here in Parliament. I think that what has happened, and I think Joseph has reported it fairly, in my view, amounts to gross disrespect to the office of Mr. Speaker. And I expect that Mr. Speaker will not treat this lightly at all, because all committees of Parliament work at the behest of Mr. Speaker, at the pleasure of Mr. Speaker. And for Mr. Speaker to have shown that level of magnanimity, and for the opposition to also obey the Speaker's directive, to collaborate with the government, to engage in a national exercise that has general benefits to all citizens, an exercise such as greening Ghana and planting trees, should have been reciprocated with, a better way of doing things. I think that it is a shame that the Appointments Committee chairperson, together with the majority side, did what they did, regardless of the opposition's magnanimity to support this, what we believe is a well-intended government project of greening Ghana. I mean, even at some point, I do know, Evans, that the ranking member on the Appointments Committee even made an appeal to the chairman of the committee to consider the committee vetting 5 nominees a day to make up for the lost day that we were going to join the country to plant trees. I mean, how cooperative do you want, an opposition side to be? And I just think that the people of Ghana must be taking note of some of these things, so that when we act intransigent, perhaps in the future on certain issues, they will not think we are deliberately sabotaging government because of our numbers. We have given them all the opportunities to work with us, but it seems every step of the way they step on the goodwill that we extend to them.
But let me ask you for this clarity: the Speaker of Parliament is the ultimate Lord of the House. He could have ruled on this matter when it was first brought to his attention. This has dragged on for more than a week. He hasn't done that. Hasn't he himself got question to answer on this matter?
No, to be fair to the Speaker, yes, he's the leader of the Parliament of Parliament, but on a matter such as this, a decision could only be taken during sitting in the chamber. And I think he was correct when he directed leadership on our side to raise it on the floor.
I mean, so why wasn't he there today? I mean, what is more important than approval of 4 ministers?
I believe that if you work around here, even as a reporter, you will understand that the job of being a speaker, has competing, schedules. And sometimes you cannot overemphasize the importance of one over the other. I do know that, for example, our leadership were absent because they were attending, another equally important assignment of commiserating with, the family of a comrade, because we lost one of our comrades. And it was important that they were there. In fact, they were actually, hurrying, I know, because I was in touch with them, to get to the floor before this motion was picked. But in their absence, they gave the directive to the majority leader to act as he did and to lead our side out.
What happens now? It's done? Or you tend to file a formal complaint?
I want to believe that after today's event, the leadership will consider what has happened. And as a caucus, we will look at the options that are available. Remember, it is the same speaker who is expected to write a transmittal letter to the president. The speaker was not in the chair, and so you do not know how he feels about what I consider disrespect, to his office as speaker. And so there are still perhaps some options that are open to either the speaker or even our caucus. But I want to trust the wisdom of the speaker and the leadership of the minority caucus to, show the way forward after today's event.
I'm grateful, Hassan Suhini, a member of the majority side, the minority side, on the back of what has happened today. There's a walkout by the minority side because they said, of course, that they did not participate in the vetting of 4 ministers because they were attending to a national duty. We'll see how that is resolved once the speaker gets back into his chair, possibly tomorrow. But let's stay in Parliament a while longer, because the National Security Minister has been on the floor today. Albert Kandapar is tonight accusing a former Ashanti Regional Security Liaison Officer who was forcibly removed from office of obstructing the work of a successor and threatening security operatives with his gun. DCOP Ayenso Parado, retired, had alleged he was assaulted and forcibly removed from his office. He claimed the men who carried out the act are members of the NPP-affiliated vigilante group Delta Force, who attempted to forcibly remove him from office because he had refused to endorse or allow them to undertake criminal activities.
The leadership of the Delta Force was for them. That was Mohammed Saidu, and the other guys were all members of the Delta Force. They saw me as an impediment in their way. Even at one point when some young men of the party were arrested before the election, Mustafa came to me and called me and told me that, why should I do this?
Well, today the National Security Minister, Albert Kandapar, was before Parliament to answer a question on the matter. He explained DCOP Opariado's 2-year contract was terminated, but he refused to leave office.
Was given a 2-year contract to serve as the Ashanti Regional Security Liaison Officer after the expiration of an initial 2-year contract, which began on January 5th, 2018. His new appointment, Mr. Speaker, took effect from January 1, 2020, and was to expire on December 31st, 2022. However, his appointment was terminated on February 19, 2021 by the National Security Coordinator. Upon the termination of his contract, Mr. Speaker, DCOP Opariado was paid his entitlements as per his appointment letter. Subsequent to the termination of the appointment of DCOP Opariado, the ministry appointed Colonel Francis Dufa Atta, retired, as the new Ashanti Regional Security Liaison Officer. The Colonel's appointment took effect from 1st May 2021. But, Mr. Speaker, DCOP Opariado refused to hand over to Colonel Francis Dufa Atta.
He then detailed how officers were dispatched to get him out of his office and lock him out, but they were met with resistance.
DCOP Operado then declined numerous invitations from the National Security Coordinator to explain his refusal to vacate the office. Meanwhile, his continued stay in office obstructed the work of the new Regional Security Liaison Officer. Mr. Speaker, against this backdrop, personnel from the Ministry of National Security were, on 11th May 2021, dispatched to the Ashanti region to ascertain the reason for DCOP Opariado's refusal to hand over to his successor, and if it became necessary, to change the locks of the door to his office. On arrival, Mr. Speaker, at his office, the personnel duly introduced themselves, but were met with acts of hostility by DCOP Opariado, including drawing his side eye.
Well, we've reached out to DCOP Operado. He has declined comment for now on this particular matter. But I want to bring in the Member of Parliament whose question the Minister was on the floor to answer. I'm talking about Roxing Dafiamekpo, joins us on the telephone line right now. Thank you very much, sir, for your time here on Newsnight. Satisfied with the answers you got?
Evans, thank you for the opportunity to comment further on this matter. Myself and a host of other MPs were not satisfied with some of the answers. The Minister in charge of National Security sought to clarify the matter with his answers, but there were still outstanding questions. For instance, if a senior officer of the National Security apparatus supposedly got his contract of employment terminated as far back as February 2021, and as of May 2021, the man was still in office, what was then the security situation in the Ashanti region? That an officer, a senior one, and whose contract of employment had been terminated, will still be assessing his office. Did the Minister of National Security report the conduct of DCOP retired Opariado to the police for intervention? First of all, did the National Security Minister also institute disciplinary actions against DCOP Opariado, even though technically at the time he was resisting his vacation of office, he was not a staff of National Security? We say this because in his former answer to Parliament, he clearly said that his original contract was to terminate in December 2022. But for some reasons, which he also refused to disclose to Parliament, his contract of employment was terminated in February. Now, if you terminate somebody's contract of employment in February, a security personnel, and then his replacement was to replace him in May 2021, why leave 3 long months to replace somebody you had relieved of his duties? So the problem was actually created by national security itself, because they didn't find an immediate replacement for the man. The new person who was to replace him was, according to the National Security Minister, was to replace him in May, which was last month.
Yeah, but he's also said today that if DC Opariado himself files a complaint, they will investigate the matter. You believe an investigation into this is necessary?
Of course, because we saw the video that circulated on this matter. We saw the man brutalized. He himself was on your channel and recounted the horrors that he went through in the hands of the initially described as vigilantes and Delta Force members, which now National Security is saying they are accredited operatives. But you see, we don't want some of these things to be happening in officialdom. That was why one question from one of the honorable members, the honorable deputy minority leader, the honorable Aveji, was the effect that if other citizens employ similar tactics to, as it were, remove persons they consider to be unlawful from their environment, would they be right? Even though the question was refused by the speaker, it was relevant. So officialdom should not be endorsing lawlessness.
Well, Roxanne Defiamepo, I'm grateful that you joined us with your thoughts there. And we, as I indicated, reached out to DCP Parado himself on the matter on the back of the revelations that were made today on the floor by the sector minister. He's declined comment. Once that changes, we'll tell you what his reaction is. Now, Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, has justified the bank's decision not to appear before Parliament to respond to a petition filed by some shareholders of defunct UT Bank and Unibank over the revocation of their licenses. Now, speaking at the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industries Business Forum, Dr. Addison called for public support for the receivers so they can retrieve all monies of the defunct financial firms and recover the over 19 billion CD bailout fund used to settle depositors.
Over the last 3 years, the receivers' asset recovery efforts, including chasing those who borrowed money, and shareholders of these defunct banks and SDIs who took loans and advances from them and never paid back, has been frustrated, especially through the use of the court system. Some of these court proceedings have been delayed by shareholders who have tried to use unwarranted challenges to the statutory powers of the Bank of Ghana and the receivers to frustrate all attempts to hold them accountable for the mismanagement of depositor funds. Fortunately, just yesterday, we have backed unfavorable court ruling that the receiver has the capacity to testify in a criminal case against one of the shareholders. The relevant laws provide for redress for persons who feel aggrieved by the exercise of the Bank of Ghana of its statutory powers. And while there are laid down procedures prescribed by the law to seek redress, these laws are not intended to subvert the cause of justice for depositors and taxpayers whose funds were used by government to pay for depositor claims. While I'm on this, I might add that running to Parliament to seek redress for the revocation of an institution's license is not one of the processes laid down under law for those who feel aggrieved by a license revocation by the Bank of Ghana.
Well, the governor also used the opportunity to request the Finance Committee of Parliament to instead make public its investigative report on a banking sector cleanup exercise, which was conducted in 2018.
Indeed, sometime in September 2018, the 7th Parliament undertook a formal inquiry into the financial sector cleanup, the factors that led to it, and the manner in which it was carried out. Among other things, the Finance Committee of Parliament invited all the key actors, such as the Ministry of Finance, the Bank of Ghana, the shareholders of the defunct institutions, the receivers, to appear before it and to answer specific questions aimed at assisting the committee to understand the events surrounding the cleanup exercise. The Bank of Ghana cooperated fully with the committee and provided all the information needed to assist the members reach their own conclusions. We had hoped that the committee would make its report available to the House and to the public after its deliberations, but we haven't heard anything since then.
So that's Ernest Addison, the central bank governor. George Yafe is here with business. I know George watched that very keenly, but you have other headlines today, George.
Well, Evans, you're right. And President Akufo-Addo cites vaccine procurement challenges and mounting debts as biggest threat to Ghana's recovery and other African countries. We have details at the ongoing African Development Bank annual meetings, and Fitch Ratings highlights Ghana's rising debts as major reasons for reviewing its credit outlook to negative, as it warns that the debt-GDP ratio will hit 81% by the end of this year. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one-stop shop for all your office essentials, and Allianz Life. Let's now settle for the details. Ratings agency Fitch has cited Ghana's rising debts as one of the major reasons for revising the country's credit outlook from stable to negative. According to the agency, it is worried that government might struggle to pay its debts back on time due to the current challenges facing its finances. We have details in the following report.
Fitch, in its latest report, revised Ghana's credit outlook from stable to negative. This is more of a warning by the agency that due to the current concerns with government's financial position, it fears Ghana may struggle to pay back its debt on time, hence the decision to take this action. The agency, in its report, noted it fears government finances will deteriorate further in the coming months because of COVID-19 spending, as well as delays in fast-tracking programs aimed at cutting down expenditure and raising more revenues. Fitch was also worried that it does not see the situation improving anytime soon, and that is why it is projecting that the total debt stock as a percentage of gross domestic product will hit 81% from the current 70.2%. On growth, Fitch was not optimistic about the outlook put out by government for this year and 2022. On the country's reserves, which currently stands at $11 billion, Fitch is projecting that Ghana will end the year at $7.6 billion. For many, the review by the rating agency is more of a warning of the struggles Ghana will encounter. The development may also increase the cost of credit for businesses.
And that was a Business Desk report. Now, President Akufo-Addo has noted that vaccine procurement challenges and mounting debt poses a major challenge to the recovery of Ghana and other African countries. The president was speaking at the opening session of the virtual African Development Bank annual meetings that opened in Accra via Ivory Coast and other countries in Africa.
In an unprecedented global event of this magnitude, we must engineer a response that will help accelerate our structural transformation. Our will in seeing it through must be total. We need to reawaken bonds of solidarity between the bank group, African Union organs and institutions, and regional economic community, and demonstrate a united commitment towards rebuilding our community. As we meet to debate and strategize, we cannot ignore the significant challenges facing us. The pandemic has taken over 130,000 lives to date on the continent and pushed our economies into contraction by an estimated 2% to 5.4% of GDP, according to the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNEP. Old pathways to recover are no longer an option.
And that's President Akufo-Addo speaking at the opening session of the African Development Bank annual meetings. Now, the World Bank has given the firm assurance of supporting moves by Ghana to start the production of vaccines in the country. Government has announced that it is working with the aid of some development partners to start producing vaccines in the country. The World Bank, however, maintains that the support will come in the form of financial support, but rather technical assistance. Pierre Laporte is the World Bank country director.
The World Bank is very supportive of the idea. However, we will not directly, as the bank, either side, invest in vaccine production. But our IFC, private sector team, is looking at the possibility of supporting this activity. But from our perspective, we think it's a very good initiative because often, as you know, we cannot give the care because of the availability. We just saw in India now what happened. AstraZeneca is not available. So to the extent that Africa can manufacture its own vaccine, this will help us deal and support our people in a more timely manner. Yeah.
What measures have you put in place with respect to what you've approved, the 430, to ensure that there is value for money and these monies are used for the purpose of which it was disbursed?
First and foremost, each time we approve a project, we have a procurement plan attached to that for the whole value. And that plan describes each and every activity that's been costed approximately, which is the basis for either direct procurement or a public tender.
World Bank Country Director Pierre Laporte. The stock market shareholders of Total lost a peso to close at 3 Ghana cedis, 64 pesos. For ETI, it was up by 4 pesos to close at 1 Ghana cedis, 80 pesos. And that's all for business on Newsnight. Evans.
I even gave you summons telling you that we are going to even plead with court to close down this place. It is an infectious site that you dress and mask.
Well, chaotic scenes are the only functioning slaughterhouse within the Accra Metropolitan Assembly when environmental health officers arrived at the facility in Aveno. The abattoir, which has been operating for over 2 decades under terrible hygienic conditions, was inundated by flies, thick spirogyra, and open drains with pungent smell. Now, all efforts by the AMA to get it removed and renovated to meet accepted hygiene and sanitary standards have proven futile. Well, tonight, the slaughterhouse, which kills about 300 cattle daily, has been the focus of the Joy Clean Ghana campaign. My colleague Manuel Krante was there live and reports.
The Joy Clean Ghana team made a first stop at the almost open-air slaughterhouse within the Aveno electoral area. In the past year alone, at least 3 visits have been made to this same slaughterhouse with a caution for its operators to ensure adherence to sanitation standards. But like the mouse when the cat is away, the departure of the officials also means the return to flouting the regulations. Florence Kuchi is Director of Public Health at the Accra Metropolitan Assembly.
I had a meeting with you people. I have come again. I had a meeting with you people. I even gave you summons telling you that we are going to even plead with court to close down this place because this place has become like an infectious site.
The team was greeted by open drains which had been choked by excreta from the intestines of the slaughtered animals. As flies besieged us in the yard, the pungent smell from the gutters at the abattoir was also in a strong contest for our attention, but that was before the orders came.
So as we are standing here, we are commanding all of them right now. They should go and get brooms and start cleaning all the cobwebs. They should start right now, please. Go and get brooms and start cleaning the cobwebs right now.
Clear the meat out, bring brooms and clean the place.
And as the workers began cleaning the premises, there were calls for the place to be closed down altogether. But owner of the abattoir, Alhaji Mahmood, pleaded for mercy, promising to ensure immediate action.
I am pleading with you so that I will come and see you with my word.
Head of Environmental Health Unit at the AMA, Joseph Asitanga, explains why a notice of abatement is being issued instead of the closure.
We have come to meet them here. If we say they shouldn't be here, means that they'll be slaughtering on the roadside. Elsewhere, a lot of it will happen by the roadside.
But Alhaji Mahmood called for government support to be able to rebuild the place which kills cattle sold as beef in most parts of Accra. In all, the team visited 4 different sites, closing down 1 public toilet in the process. For Joy News, Manuel Krante.
Well, let's stay with this issue because we're also hearing from the Sanitation and Water Resources Minister Cecilia Benadapa, who says government is on course in realizing its aim of making Accra the cleanest city in Africa. She also revealed government has paid over 500 million Ghana cedis to the Ghana Water Company Limited out of the 896 million cedis cost it incurred as a result of provision of free water to Ghanaian households during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, she was speaking at the media briefing in Accra today.
896,291,330.72 Ghana cedis. And about
the total cost is over 896 million, but the finance ministry is paying, and we have already paid 500 million cedis. The rest has not been paid because we have to do due diligence first and validate them before payment.
The bill verification, validation to make sure say figures no nyina ye pepe ne supply no na ya advice finance no more tria. It's a process.
Well, she's also been updating the public on the government's progress in attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals on water and sanitation by 2030.
Made strides towards the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals in water and sanitation. Currently, an Afrobarometer survey findings SDG scorecard indicates that about 33% of Ghanaians do have access to household toilets, an increment of 15%, whilst population with access to water has increased by 3%, from 89% to 92%. Let us remain cautious and maintain a healthy environmental sanitation. Let us conserve treated water as well as protect and preserve our water bodies.
And you had the sanitation and water resource sanitation minister, Madam Abana Dapa, and of course that's it for Newsnight tonight, because up next is the continuation of our excellent coverage of the European tournament, which is still underway across Europe. You want to stay tuned for that and more here on Joy 99.7 FM. You want to also go on to myjoyonline.com. Where the leading story there is Parliament to pass stringent law to fight activities of LGBTQ plus. That's according to the Speaker of Parliament. We also have the DCOP Pariado was removed from office for obstructing his successor's work. That's Kandapa. You will not be Attorney General forever, Jinapo, to the Attorney General Godfrey Dame. Also on myjoyonline.com. AstraZeneca Sputnik V vaccines potent against COVID-19 Delta variant. That's according to the Ghana Health Service. And you also want to read up on Dr. Mark Palm was a main brain behind the plot to overthrow government. That's military chief alleges in court. Enjoy the rest of your evening.